2 was usually regarded as the best Mega Man game in the series among casual fans and even some hardcore fans. This is true as my dad firmly believes that this game is the best game in the series and played it back in the day. A lot of people praise the game for its music, the fun that comes from the game, and even its large improvement of the original. But does it really live up to what fans say it does? Well, I'm here, McCloud, to review this game and prove that it may or may not live up to what fans say about the game. And personally, living with someone who loves this game above all others, I feel it would be good to review this game in depth from an analytical standpoint. But without further ado, let's get started. The game starts you at the title screen with two difficulty options, normal and difficult, which seems reasonable until you consider that the mode was only made because the team thought that American audiences wouldn't want to play it because it was too difficult. And coming from a team that made Mega Man 7 and 8, I don't get their logic. Mega Man 2 is among one of the easiest in the series, maybe even the easiest, and seeing as they just came from Mega Man 1, which was drastically harder, I don't get how both of these things were added for less difficulty. Although I feel like the normal mode is a problem for the most part and basically serves no purpose, I will give it credit where it's due. Normal mode nerfs some of the more annoying enemies that you'd have to deal with on difficult mode. Even though I feel this is good, there are basically only two of these annoying enemies that don't really serve a role in the game, so it's not that big of a deal in the long run. So we start difficult mode and we're brought to a stage select with 8 Robot Masters, which is a big improvement over the original 6 in the previous game. Along with that, a password system was implemented to act as a save state for your progress. In the long run, I was glad that Mega Man 2 started this trend and laid the groundwork for these types of things. Without it, the games that came to follow would be a lot worse, but I digress. Since he is the easiest boss, my first option would be Flashman, as he is most fans' first option when playing this game. So, let's go. Let me just start off Flashman on a positive note. This stage looks very vibrant and was probably excellent for its time. The vibrant setting of the stage is something to mark when you look at it. You can really tell they put a lot of effort into the aesthetic of the stage. As for the layout and difficulty, I can almost say the same. I love the maze aspect of the stage, and it can really be rewarding to take the stage after acquiring the Crash Bomb to take shortcuts. Even without the Crash Bomb, the multiple paths to take give the stage some decent replay value to them, and one's experience will differ from somebody else's. The music is also pretty good, I must add, as the definitive spot that Mega Man 2 reigns. Even if this isn't top tier music from the stage, I can still enjoy it, and so can many others, and good music can go a long way to improving a game and its quality. But as for the bad of the stage, I have some things to cover. Flashman's boss fight is very boring, and the fight pretty much consists of him running back and forth, jumping randomly to sometimes freeze and shoot you, but the only thing is how unpredictable and crammed he can be. With the small stage layout, getting a hit in the fight can sometimes be near impossible, even with him jumping. But if you think I'm saying he's hard, that's far from it. He rarely even attacks, and with damage output of Mega Man in this game, it makes it blow over very quickly. Everyone likes to talk about how overpowered the Charge Buster was in Mega Man 5, but in Mega Man 2, you do about 2 or 3 lines of damage per shot. This makes most of the bosses easy and practically no challenge with it. The fight is pretty much determined by how much health you have, and not much on skill. Even if you think the weapon is a redeeming quality, then you'd be wrong. The Time Stopper pretty much stops time and that's it. Nothing less, nothing more. You can't shoot, pause, switch weapons, or anything with this weapon. And even the item you get afterwards isn't even that good. Item 3 is practically an inferior version of Item 1, except it can scale walls. Useful in some situations, but not many compared to Item 1. Not to mention that the weapon, get screen, just drags on and on. This can be very frustrating sometimes, and really has no reason to happen, but with all that ranting out of the way, let's head on over to Bubble Man's stage. For the most part, Bubble Man's stage is a downgrade from Flashman's stage. The music and aesthetics are a downgrade, and even though it pulls away from the simplicity and shortness of Flashman's stage, it still has problems of its own. To start off, the frogs on this stage can be very annoying. A lot of the smaller frogs can be a pain to take out, even requires high accuracy even in turbo mode. Not to mention the limited space you are given is a pain for dealing with these enemies. Another problem with this stage is the sheer gimmickiness of the level. This stage was the first one to set the water stage and space gimmick found in many other Mega Man games, and you know why, because you jump higher and faster in water. This gimmick can be straight up annoying and really doesn't add to the level, but if you think the boss fight would be any better, you'd be dead wrong. The boss fight tells the problem of Flashman's, with that being the difficulty to avoid attacks and the easiness to beat the enemy. Bumbleman will fire attacks that are near impossible to dodge, but is only easy because of how sluggish he is and how long he takes. Not to mention the spikes at the top really don't serve a purpose other than crossing out an option you could potentially use to defeat him. Although this stage falls behind Flashman's and isn't all that good, at least he has a decently good weapon with the Bubble Head. While the Bubble Head doesn't work on some enemies, it sticks to the ground, has very high usage and power. While definitely not as good as some other weapons, it still serves as a decent weapon, but with Bubble Man out of the way, let's head on over to Airman. There is much to say about Airman. His stage is fairly simple with its design, but that doesn't mean it's perfect, as the enemies can be a pain, and the music leaves a lot to be desired. The music can feel very bland at times, and for Mega Man 2 having the best music in the series, it's kind of underwhelming. As for the enemies, there are two that I should complain about: the annoying birds that drop eggs, and the air tikis. To start off with the air tikis, they are okay for the most part, except for the many enemies they shoot out that replace the ones that have already been defeated immediately after. The best strategy for these enemies is just to avoid them before they can get to you, but as for the birds that drop eggs, they are a pain. Hitting them without the Turbo B button can be a pain, especially since they hide behind clouds, making them very unpredictable. It's not necessarily bad when a game is hard, but when it lacks accessibility, that's when the game suffers. While I'll get more into that later, Mega Man 2 lacks accessibility in some places, yet still remains the easiest in the series. Moving on from my previous point, the boss battle seems to be similar to most of the boss battles in this game, with near unavoidable attacks, yet being a complete pushover due to sluggish responses. I mean, come on, you can pretty much jump behind Airman when he shoots his tornadoes, making him very easy, and I don't understand why people say they can't beat a pushover of a boss. Onto the weapon you get, I find it to be a pretty good weapon both in power and function, other than the enemies that are immune to it. It's very useful if you are using it on Crashman, but as for the item you get, it's okay. Better than item 3, but it only seems to be useful in Heatman stage and Wily stage 2, making it pretty useless. There really isn't much to say about Airman, but I'll continue on to another fairly easy stage, that being Woodman. Woodman stage is definitely one of the better stages in Mega Man 2 in almost all aspects. The music is pretty good, the difficulty is great, there are no gimmicks, and the visuals just look amazing. The environment of the stage is just mesmerizing, and the use of backgrounds and locations really make this stage stand out from the others. The stage takes place in the woods, to underground, to high up in the sky, to the boss room. This is truly a work of its time, and this is some Mega Man X level stuff for being on the second NES game in the series. More emphasis on the other aspects, this stage isn't completely easy, but not hard, and has no gimmicks to it. The only real flaw on the stage would have to be the birds also found in Airman stage, but they're more bearable in this stage, and the running chickens that kind of jump randomly. Other than those two enemies that rarely even pop up, this stage is a really great stage, but I wish I could say the same for the boss. Like most boss battles in this game, the falling moves are almost unavoidable because they shift back and forth, and on top of that, Woodman is kind of guilty of being really slow and being able to be shot a lot. If it wasn't for sluggishness, this battle would be borderline unbearable with the Mega Buster. But what if you don't use the Mega Buster? You may be asking. Well, in that case, he has two weaknesses, and in a way, I kind of like how it's set up. Woodman is weak to the Atomic Fire and Metal Blade. While the Metal Blade is the most overpowered weapon in the whole series, the Atomic Fire can do tremendous damage and even one-shot Woodman on normal difficulty. The reason why I enjoy this setup is because it rewards you for wanting to take the risk of the Atomic Fire, which isn't that good of a weapon, but I digress. While I like the setup, being able to completely one-shot Woodman with a weapon makes him way too easy. But more on weapons, the one you get is pretty mediocre. The Wood Shield is a shield weapon that has effect on most enemies and doesn't really disappear that easily. It can also be thrown, giving it an edge over shield weapons in the series. As for where it falls short, it has no resistance to shots and really only works on bird enemies because they can one-shot these enemies. Moving on, another boss we need to cover is Metal Man, and boy do I have a lot to cover. Metal Man stage is set in a factory and in my opinion is one of the worst stages of Mega Man 2. Constantly jumping on the conveyor belts can be annoying, especially in the meat chomper segment that just drags on and on. If you think that segment is bad, the one that comes after is a lot worse, with spikes popping in and out of the ground and ceiling with no telegraphing. The drills can even seem a bit random and unpredictable at times, making the only counter on this part the Wood Shield, and who's honestly going to beat Woodman before Metal Man? The first segment of this is just very boring and a pain to play, and the saddest thing is that the rest of the stage barely makes up for it. The rest of the stage is really mediocre and really doesn't try anything new, not to mention the music is barely above average at best. Even the enemies can be annoying with the constant conveyor belts, the pink enemies that just eat up hits, the unpredictable drills, the annoying can't-stack enemies, and the annoying spring enemies that can only be killed with the bubble light or quick boomerang. To add insult to injury, the boss fight sucks because of Metal Man's randomness and lack of patterns, not to mention that they put conveyor belts in his boss room for seemingly no reason. I already have a problem with randomness because of no damage run and low health being a thing, so the choice to go with the battle determined by randomness is a bad decision. Even if you want to do a no damage run or play it cautious, it's really slow, and most of your attacks will miss because of his jumping height, which is completely random. The only redeeming quality through this mess is the weapon, which is good but completely breaks the game, and here's why. The Metal Blade is the most overpowered weapon in the Megaman series. While it's not completely broken in one single aspect other than the weapon energy, it's above average in every aspect. Not only does the weapon take 4 blades per line, it also shoots in 8 directions, puts out an above average damage output, and is fairly large. Once you acquire this weapon, there is almost no reason to use the other weapons or even the Mega Buster for that matter because it's good against half the bosses, including Metal Man himself. Why was this even a thing? The only place you can even use the Metal Blade on Metal Man is the boss freak bites, and it completely destroys the point of rock, paper, scissors aspects that was in the beginning of the game. Moving on, we have Heatman stage to cover, and hopefully it's better than this mess, so let's go. Heatman stage is not that great. Definitely not as bad as Metal Man, but still pretty bad for the most part. The stage starts out with falling enemies that are well telegraphed, I must say. I don't have too much difficulty with this part, and it's an okay part of the stage. The real problem lies in the block puzzles and the flying cans scattered throughout the entire level. The block puzzles aren't really a problem, especially since they've implemented an easy version to do first as sort of a tutorial. I will give the creators credit for that, but the second block puzzle completely throws everything good about the first one out the window. The second full block puzzle you have to do can be a complete pain if you don't have item 2, but can be effortless with it. To emphasize on the second block puzzle, the problem is simply how long it is, the fact that most of it is covered by a pit, and the one part where their block appears above you without notice. I will at least give them some credit because most of the hard parts are above ground, but the segment where a block appears above you without notice just makes you have to restart the entire thing and hope your jump is timed correctly. More on the item 2 part, there really isn't much of a reason to get item 2 before this because Airman does not beat Heatman. Because of that, the stage gives you a big old screw you if you don't happen to grab this before heading to the stage. This is very bad design and really shouldn't have been the case in the first place, and even if it had stayed, I feel like there could have been better ways of executing the idea. At least the rest of the stage is short and redeeming because the fight against Heatman really isn't all that bad. Repetitive but fun to face. I'd say the most fun part would be when he throws fire at you in the beginning and it's fun to avoid. It's really a breath of fresh air considering that most of the bosses in this stage are very simplistic. As for the weapons, well, the atomic fire is pretty useless and sluggish, plus the only real use for it is when you want to take out something in one hit, but honestly, the item you get is really where it shines. Item 1 is by far the most useful of the 3 weapons, even though they all have their uses. It's definitely an improvement to your arsenal and makes beating Heatman more worth it. With Heatman beaten, there are only 2 options left, Crashman and Quickman, and the easier option of the 2 is Crashman, so see you there. Crashman stage is a unique stage that progresses vertically as the background darkens to either mimic the passing of time or a journey into space. This stage has a lot going for it, and it's one that I'd call a mostly good stage, but here are the problems. The constantly respawning cans that often approach you from angles you can't shoot and block your path, and the birds that drop eggs, and trust me, they are more unbearable here than they are in any stage. To emphasize on my point, the cans are just about everywhere within the stage except for the last half, which has the previously mentioned birds to drop eggs except for when it happens, you're climbing a ladder and have no other defensive options other than the leaf shield, which not all players are going to have. So if you don't have the leaf shield or metal blade, you are going to take a lot of damage just from the climbing section alone, and it will drag on longer than it really needs to. While I do hate these parts, the stage itself is really good and it does something new to really spice things up. The vertical progression is something different from Megaman 2, and this stage introduced the modern mess that would become a staple of the series from then on out. I also might add that the stage tries something different from a platform moving on a wire to a maze-like arrangement of ladders. It's these things that really make the stage so great, and if you think the boss battle lets down, like others, then you'd actually be wrong. Crashman's boss battle takes skill, and he doesn't have any almost unavoidable attacks, but takes skill and rhythm to beat. Heck, even my first video on my channel was a video of me beating Crashman with my eyes closed. His boss battle is just so much fun, and it's a great cap to the great stage that Crashman has. Even the weapon you get is decent. The Crash Bomb is a bomb that will latch onto the wall and explode. Cool function, but not executed as well as I'd like. Sure, it's fun, but it eats up weapon energy, making it a very weapon. With all the other weapons covered, the last one we have to cover is Quickman and his stage. When you start off Quickman's stage, you're introduced to a level that includes traversing downwards and dodging lasers for the most part, at time. There really isn't much to say about it. The lasers are well telegraphed at first, and the enemies in the bottom segment are slightly tedious but not too much to complain about. The stage is really good up until that point until you get to the second laser segment, which is poorly telegraphed despite the previous segment on how to avoid them. The lasers come in way too fast contrary to how it should be. The segment declines in difficulty the more laser puzzles you go through oddly. Not to mention that the inconsistency with the lasers make the first part very unpredictable. The inconsistency lies in the lasers that shoot out from seemingly nowhere. This contradicts the first laser segment that shows lasers shooting out of obvious holes in the wall, creating a big lack of accessibility. You may be arguing that you can utilize the time stopper, and while that is true, you shouldn't be using a boss's weakness on his own stage. As if it couldn't get any worse after that, the final part of the stage bombards you with sniper drills that just eat up hits in a somewhat small area. All in all, the first segment of Quickman stage is okay for the most part, but the second part isn't that good and lacks accessibility. Just because it's true for the stage doesn't exactly mean that the boss battle will be the same, which I will cover. The battle with Quickman pretty much encapsulates both the difficulty of a boss should be, mixed in with attacks similar to most bosses in the game. While I don't feel like any attacks are really impossible or near impossible to avoid, the battle was very overwhelming. But in the end, the emphasis lies on evasion and skill. Unlike other boss battles such as Woodman, Flashman, Bubbleman, Airman, and maybe even Metalman's boss fights pretty much consists of spamming the shoot button while putting little emphasis on trying to avoid. Quickman is a very skill dependent fight, and that's what I can appreciate with this fight. Even with the execution of his weakness, I feel it was very smart because it does something very different with it. That being half health hindrance on Quickman rather than the typical strong attack that can easily destroy the opponent. Not saying that there's anything wrong with those types of weaknesses, just saying I feel it's something different. I can't exactly say the same about the Crash Bomb because it makes no sense that such a slow weapon would beat Quickman of all people. To basically sum up this fight, it's well designed in comparison to the other Mega Man 2 fights, but could be modified because of how overwhelming it is. At least the good payoff is that you get arguably one of the best weapons in the game, that has balance to it unlike the Metal Blade, with a total ammo of 256 shots, quick execution, and high accuracy. The Quick Boomerang can be one of the best and most versatile weapons in the game. This weapon definitely does come in handy for Wily Stage 1, which comes up right after Quickman. As one of the most iconic stages because of its music, Wily Stage 1 is a good stage. Catchy music, a great environment, and it's reasonable in difficulty. I'd say the only real problem lies in the final boss, but the stage itself is excellent. There is one thing to this stage, and that is the sheer amount of weapons you'll be using to take out some of the enemies. You'll really be needing the weapon house found in the second stage, but I digress. The final battle with the Mech Dragon consists of jumping across a bunch of blocks that basically have slide physics and battling the Mech Dragon. I feel as if this battle is tedious because of the insta pit below you and little ground you have to stand on. On top of the bad design, the fight is practically effortless as it consists of spamming Quick Boomerang and winning the fight. Even though the Mech Dragon fight isn't the greatest, I can still appreciate this stage as a concept, and it is a good thing. After defeating him, it leads you into Wily Stage 2, which is a pretty good stage. Wily Stage 2 starts off with weapon ups scattered throughout the beginning of the stage so you can refill your items after Wily Stage 1. It's good that they knew this was a problem and thought ahead to give the player an easier time with the stage. All of the stage is mostly good, and the flyboys can be kind of chaotic at times, and the drill section learned nothing from Metal Man's stage, being how much more narrow the corridor is. The only reason for this to exist is for weapon upgrading, but even then it could be better. It doesn't help that the meat chompers make up a section of the stage and they just drag on. These issues were already a problem in Metal Man's stage, and for a game that Keiji and Inafune put everything into, I'm not seeing it in these sections. At least the maze aspect and the spike sections are okay, especially for a spike section, and the final boss is actually really innovative and executed well. The whole premise of the battle is to avoid pink blocks that come out of the walls and floors to destroy all of them. This is something that hadn't been done before in a Mega Man game, and the thing that makes its execution so perfect are the weapon interactions with the boss. If you choose the Mega Buster, you won't run out of ammo, but you will have no advantages. Metal Blade shoot out in 8 directions, but it takes 2 of them to take out an enemy. Bubblehead has lower range, but it can take out this enemy in 1 hit. And the Quick Boomerang is rapid fire and has better accuracy, so whichever one you want to pick is completely subjective. Other than that, I'd say the only problem with this stage is the boss fight, that being the unpredictability of which blocks will come out of where, but that's just a minor nitpick. Other than that, the stage is an okay stage to say the least. On to Stage 3, I'd say it's a very good stage with an innovative concept. Just like the first Wily stage, this one has a reason for its design, being that you sneak through the sewers to get Wily. This really gives a sense of adventure, but the stage isn't perfect. The stage really lacks enemies, so while platforming is where it's at, other than the giant fish, there aren't many enemies, and some you really can't avoid. Not to mention that the spikes function like a leap of faith, also making the stage worse. In the end, it's a stage that is good in some aspects, bad in others, but the boss battle proves that this stage is a middle ground stage. The boss battle is okay to say the least. You're given very little space and it is easy, but it's a different concept and clearly has inspiration from Gutsman in the previous game. Not too much to say, but the 4th stage of the Wily Castle could easily take the cake as the worst stage in the game. Get ready for a lot of ranting because there are going to be a lot of problems with this stage, so let's go. The stage starts off with ladders going up so you can progress through the stage. Once you go up those ladders, the stage goes downhill, because there are invisible floor puzzles with absolutely no differences to regular floors. The only possible way to tell what's fake or not is by using the bubble head, and even then, you shouldn't be using a boss's weapon to stop an inconvenience. There's even one section where you're forced to do this over a pit of spikes. I get that item 2 is available, but it's another problem that it isn't for most of the other invisible floor puzzles. As if the stage couldn't get any worse, the moving platform sections just drag on and on. With the already slow, invisible floor sections, what good was adding this also slower section to the mix? Even when you get out of the moving platform areas, you're bombarded with enemies that just eat up hits and your health, making you unprepared for the boss battle ahead, which is also another problem in and of itself. The main objective of the boss battle is to take out all of the blasters on the wall, only using the crash bomb. It sounds like a good idea on paper, but to beat the boss, you have to use every single one of your crash bombs and make sure you waste none of them. This leaves out a lot of accessibility as players won't immediately know their crash bomb count and how many is needed. I get that you can take shortcuts and kill 2 birds with 1 stone, but for the most part you will be straight up empty by the time it's over. Aside from the crash bomb complaint, the shooters deal high damage and they are really impossible to avoid unless you abuse the start button every time they fire. After already being worn down from your poor enemy placement, this is just insult to injury. Not to mention that you need item 1 and 3 to even clear this, which won't even let you pause until they've already faded out. This battle is just very badly designed, and the stage definitely doesn't fix the problem. Luckily, once this is over, you go to the next stage, which is good but still far from perfect. The next stage is a typical boss rush start in this game and will be a trend in the series for games to come. Sadly, this isn't a good trend as it's very pointless and all crammed into one level. Many people have their complaints with these stages, and had bosses been spread out or not even in here at all, it would have been better. For the most part, a boss rush is pointless and serves no point but maybe filler, I don't know. So you basically clear the bosses and then you get to Wily and a mech that frankly looks similar to the one seen in Mega Man 1. I don't really have any problems with this fight except for the fact that you're screwed if you ran out of E-tanks. I swear, his attacks are hard to avoid, and with 2 energy meters on Wily, I feel this kind of traps players if they didn't manage to collect any E-tanks. After the battle is done, the floor under you collapses and it leads you into the next and final stage. There really isn't much to say about the final stage. There's no music, no enemies, and for some reason there's high damaging acid that falls from the ceiling. The level itself is pretty pointless, but I think there's a reason for why there's no music. After the floor collapses, you know the final battle is up ahead and you're going to take out Wily for good. You avoid the acid and everything in a stage to give a final confrontation to Wily, although this time he's turned into an alien. Yeah, I don't get where the developers were going with this one, but if you look at it the right way, it's one of the most epic Wily battles we've had. Think about it. This guy's been causing havoc for the past 2 games. When you finally confront him after getting off the hook, it's a one-on-one battle. No mechs, no robots, nothing, just you and him. As for the battle itself, it leaves a lot to be desired. It's pretty simple and not too much of a challenge, especially if you have E-tanks. Plus, I'd even consider the previous Wily boss battle to be a much harder fight. But when you finally defeat this creature, it is revealed that it was just Wily controlling a hologram and has no choice but to pray for mercy as he is lost to Megaman once again, leaving you, the hero of this game. Well, that concludes my review of Mega Man 2. So honestly, what do I think of the game and how it stands up? Well, in terms of progression, I think this game did a fine job as it set a standard for what good and polished NES games should be like. I really can't say the same for the original Mega Man as it felt unpolished and even a bit bare bones like games at the time. The leap this game made was influential for the rest of the series, and had it not been for this game, we may not have the Blue Bomber we have today. That's not saying it doesn't have any problems. I believe it has them and definitely doesn't live up to what the audience thinks. While it's not the best game, it is good and I will give it that, but to conclude my final thoughts, I would give 3 pros and 3 cons about this game. Some of the pros were the excellent music. It really was a step up from its predecessor. Its items, definitely the most useful selection we've had before Mega Man 9. And finally, it won the casual market, which made Mega Man what it is today. As for the cons, there's the gimmicky aspects that pop up more than they should, the spike in difficulty that happens despite how low the bar is in terms of difficulty, And finally, the boss battles that all have some sort of problem to them. Despite what I just said about the pros and cons, I'd give this game a final rating of 6.8 out of 10. Definitely a good game, but not as good as most fans would say. But if you like this review, then you should like, comment, and subscribe. And this is Watch McCloud, signing out. Just as a quick reminder, I would like to give a special thanks to Gemini Laser for all the footage I used. His channel by far is some of the best Mega Man Let's Plays, and I recommend you check him out. He truly has some great content, and the link will be in the description. But with that all out of the way, that was my Mega Man 2 review. Hope you guys enjoyed.